Welcome back to our channel. Today is more than a video. You will see the start of human flight. Two ordinary men achieved the impossible. They had no money, no university education, and absolutely no support. This is a true story. It is not fiction or fantasy. This is the real tale of the Wright brothers. They are the men who showed the world flight, a tale of impossible dreams, a tale of creating wings from failure. It is about two brothers who changed history. They succeeded not by luck. They won because they never gave up. You will learn how to dream big, even when others doubt you. You will see how greatness comes from daily work and through great pain. Most importantly, you will improve your English. This powerful story uses simple words. Everything is explained just for you. So please get your headphones. This story could possibly change your life. Let's start. Part 1. Before the Wings. The childhood of dreamers. So, who were the Wright brothers? Let's journey back to 1867. Wilbur Wright was born that year. He was from Millville, Indiana, in the USA. His younger brother Orville was born later. That was in Dayton, Ohio, in 1871. Their family was not wealthy. They were certainly not famous. Their father was a religious leader, a bishop. Their mother was a homemaker. She had a special talent for building things. Their home was very simple. Their life seemed ordinary, but an amazing curiosity lived in their hearts. One day, their father returned from a journey. Wilbur was about 11. Orville was only 7. He gave them a small gift. It was a toy helicopter. The toy was made of cork and bamboo. Rubber bands gave it power. Its design came from a French inventor. They wound up the rubber bands. Then they released the toy. It shot up into the air. Both brothers were completely amazed. The little toy hovered for a few seconds. Then it dropped to the ground. But an idea was awakened in their minds. What if a big machine could fly like that? They played with the toy until it broke. Then they built their own models. The dream of flying began in their childhood. But it took decades to make it real. Decades of struggle, work, and failure. They never attended college. They held no fancy engineering degrees. They were self-taught men. They were curious, passionate, and eager to build. They adored books, bicycles, and machines. They read every book they could find about flight, science, birds, and mechanics. Orville launched a printing press at 18. Wilbur was there to help him. They built their own machines. They sold small local newspapers. Later, they opened a bicycle shop. They repaired and sold bikes. Why does this matter? Because it taught them to build with their hands. They were not just dreamers in a room, they were doers, builders, and hard workers. They often stood outside for hours. They would just watch birds fly. They studied how birds used their wings, how they shifted direction, how they remained in the air. Most people just saw birds. But the Wright brothers saw flying machines. Birds fly by controlling the air, Wilbur said, not just by flapping their wings. They grew obsessed with aerodynamics. This is the science of air movement, but this was the late 1800s. No one had built a working aircraft yet. Many scientists even called human flight impossible, but the Wright brothers ignored them. They possessed something stronger than facts. They possessed belief. Around 1892, they opened their shop. The Wright Cycle Company was in Dayton, Ohio. They repaired bikes to earn money. This income funded their dream of flight. Their shop became their laboratory. They constructed models of wings. They tested gliders from wood and cloth. They failed over and over again. But they always continued. They were not seeking fame. They were pursuing a vision only they saw. They read about a German engineer. His name was Otto Lilienthal. He built gliders but died in a crash. They studied every book and sketch from anyone who tried to fly. But the brothers noticed something vital. Most inventors failed at one thing. They could not control the machine in the air. So the Wrights focused on balance and control. Power was not their main problem. They tested a brand new idea. It was called wing warping. This meant twisting the wings to steer, just like a bird does. This single idea would change the world. By 1900, they began glider tests. They chose a windy location. It was Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. Why did they go there? It offered strong, steady winds. The sand was soft for crash landings. And it was very remote. They didn't want the public's laughter. They packed all their tools. They left their shop behind. They stepped into the unknown. They lived inside a simple tent. They built their own workshop there. They even cooked all their own meals. There were no cameras or reporters. No one was there to give awards. Just two brothers. Sand filled their shoes. Grease covered their hands, and the sky held their dreams. Each day they would haul heavy gliders up hills. They would test flights and crash. Then they would rebuild and test again. They made over 700 glider flights. This was before they considered an engine. That is how much pain they endured. Silently and patiently, with absolutely no applause. After all their glider work from 1900 to 1902, the Wright brothers proved one thing. They could build and control a gliding machine. But the greatest challenge was next. Could they make it fly with a motor? Not just glide on the wind, but create its own power. This was a giant leap forward. They needed something new to the world, a very lightweight engine, a propeller system that was light but strong, a way to keep the machine balanced. No textbook existed to help them. They had to invent it all from nothing. The brothers knew little about engines. So what was their method? They read and they studied. Then they experimented. They tried to purchase a light gas engine. But nobody made what they needed. Most engines were far too heavy. They were built for cars on the ground. So you can guess what they did. They built their very own engine, with help from their friend Charlie Taylor. He was a skilled mechanic. They made a 12-horsepower engine from aluminum. This was a rare material then. It weighed only 180 pounds, or 82 kilograms. Yet, it was strong enough for two propellers. No instructions were given to them. They simply figured it out. Every single piece was made by hand. Just think about that for a moment. While designing their plane, they had a realization. Every other inventor had been wrong. Most early planes had terrible propellers. They just pushed air backward like paddles. But the Wrights had a different idea. A propeller is a rotating wing, they said. This was a revolutionary concept. They tested various shapes for months. using math and wind tunnels. Eventually, they designed curved wooden propellers. Each one was 5 feet long. They could slice through the air like wings. The design was 95% efficient. That is more efficient than many modern ones. That is how advanced they were. Their final machine had a name. It was the 1903 Wright Flyer. Here are its specifications. Its wingspan measured 40 feet. It weighed 605 pounds. The engine had 12 horsepower. Spruce wood and fabric made its frame. Wing warping controlled its movement. Twin propellers provided the power. The pilot's position was unusual. He lay flat on his stomach. This design reduced wind resistance. It looked very strange, more like a bed with wings than an airplane. But it was finally ready. They had built it and tested it. Now the time had come to fly it. In December 1903, they returned to Kitty Hawk. Wilbur and Orville brought their machine. The weather was bitterly cold. The winds were very strong. But their moment had arrived. They placed the Flyer on wooden tracks. This helped it move without wheels. They used a launch rail system. They had no modern runways. The plane had no cockpit. No seatbelts were included. There was zero protection. It was just wood, cloth, gas, and courage. On December 14th, they made their first try. Wilbur was the pilot. But the machine lifted too fast. It stalled, and then it crashed. They repaired the damage. They adjusted all the controls. Then they prepared to try again. No tears, no complaints, no giving up. On the morning of December 17th, the wind blew hard at 27 miles per hour. Orville and Wilbur tossed a coin. Orville won the toss. He would be the very first to fly. The time was 10:35 a.m. Only 5 local people were watching. Orville Wright lay down flat on the Flyer. The engine roared to life. The whole plane started to shake. And then it lifted off the ground. It did not go far or high. But history was made that day. A powered machine with a pilot had flown. It stayed in the air and landed safely. Flight time was 12 seconds. The distance was 120 feet. A new chapter for humanity began. They flew 3 more times that day. The longest flight lasted 59 seconds. It covered a distance of 852 feet. The air was cold. The machine was very basic. But they had conquered gravity. There was no big celebration. Just a photograph and a letter home. One witness was John T. Daniels. He took a photo of that first flight. That picture became world famous. It shows Orville in the air. Wilbur is running alongside 2 brothers. One single dream. And the sky was no longer a barrier. Part 2. The world doesn't believe you until you win. You might expect a global celebration. Humanity's first flight was a huge event. But that did not happen. Instead, their news received only silence. People expressed doubt and even scorn. Many major newspapers ignored it. The New York Times refused to print it. Why did this happen? The idea of human flight still seemed like a joke. People made many excuses. If it were real, the government would be there. We didn't see it, so it is not true. Bicycle mechanics can't fly before scientists. The Wright brothers were rejected and dismissed. But they did not become angry. They did not shout at the world. They held one thought in their hearts. We will fly again and again, until the entire world can see. After their 1903 success, they went home. But they did not stop to celebrate. They went straight back to their workshop. They knew the first flight was a beginning. The plane only flew 120 feet. That was not enough to convince people. So they decided to build a new plane. A plane that could fly for longer. One that could turn in circles. One that could carry a passenger. And fly in public. This new model was the Flyer 2. Later, it became the Flyer 3. They improved the engine's power. They changed the shape of the wings. They made the steering system better. Their small shop became a future laboratory. You might be wondering something. Why didn't they show everyone right away? Because they were very smart. Showing their design too early was risky. Others could copy their work. Someone might steal their invention. So from 1904 to 1905, they flew in private. They tested near Dayton in secret fields. But they made huge progress. By 1905, their Flyer 3 could fly 24 miles. It could stay airborne for 38 minutes. It made controlled turns and circles. They had built the first real airplane, a machine that could fly and land safely and be flown over and over. They had truly done it. But still, the world did not believe them. Can you imagine that feeling? You invent the impossible. You prove it repeatedly. But nobody is watching you. No one is listening. And absolutely no one cares. In the early 1900s, others made claims. Inventors said they had built planes. But most of these were failures. They were unbalanced machines that hopped. One particular name stood out. Samuel Langley was a respected scientist. He had funding from the government. He also had a very large team. He built a flying machine, too. But it crashed every single time. Meanwhile, the Wright brothers were succeeding. With no funding, fame, or support. They were flying safely and consistently. Finally, people started to ask questions. Who are these bicycle mechanics from Ohio? The Wright brothers were also businessmen. They wanted to sell their invention to the U.S. Army or European governments. But everyone gave the same reply. Show us your machine in the air. The brothers had a condition. We will show you after a contract is signed. Our design is a secret. This stalemate lasted for years. No one would agree to sign first. Everyone was afraid of being tricked. So the Wrights remained stuck, flying in private, waiting for a believer. During this time, people tried to steal credit. A Brazilian inventor made public flights. His name was Alberto Santos Dumont. This was in Paris in 1906, years after the Wright brothers. The media called him the true inventor. Why? Because he flew in front of people. That was all that mattered. But the Wrights were being protective, and because of this, they were forgotten. Imagine watching someone else get credit for an invention that is yours. It is incredibly painful and unfair. But again, they stayed quiet. They just kept preparing for their moment. In 1907, a French military group called, they were interested in the Wright airplane. The brothers finally saw their chance. In 1908, they made a huge decision. Wilbur would travel to France. He would give public flight shows. Orville would stay in the United States. He would do the same for the U.S. military. The time had come to prove the world wrong. Live in front of everyone. This time, it was not just a test. They were risking their lives for their truth. In May 1908, Wilbur Wright went to France. His mission was to show Europe the truth, that the Wrights had already won the sky. But his arrival was met with no excitement. The press was very doubtful. French inventors thought they were better. Many people believed Wilbur was a liar. They said, "This American claims he can fly. Let him prove it to us." Some papers even made fun of his clothes. He dresses like a simple farmer. What could he possibly know about flight? Wilbur did not argue back. He did not try to explain. He just quietly went to work. The airplane was shipped in boxes. Some of the parts were damaged. Others were completely missing. His tools were delayed. So Wilbur had to rebuild the flyer alone, in a workshop, piece by piece. Imagine this difficult situation. You are in a foreign country. People think you are a fraud, and you must prove the future. From a pile of wood and canvas, he worked silently and patiently. With the same care as in his bike shop, this care brought him to history's edge. On August 8, 1908, the world watched. Hundreds of people were gathered there. Reporters, scientists, and soldiers. Everyone expected to laugh, not cheer. But Wilbur started the engine. He ran down the launch rail, and he lifted into the air. The laughter instantly stopped. He did not just fly in a straight line. He turned and he circled. He flew smoothly, like a great bird. Then he came down for a perfect landing. The crowd was frozen in shock. Then one person started clapping, then another, and another. The whole field erupted in cheers. The press went wild the next day. The Wrights are not liars. They are conquerors of the sky. Overnight, Wilbur became a huge star, and the world finally started to believe. The same people who doubted him before now wanted interviews and photos. They offered him business deals. Kings and scientists came to the field. Other inventors watched and took notes. People cried as they saw him fly. Wilbur made many more flights. He showed the flyer was fully controlled. It could fly long distances. He did not just show a machine. He showed that human flight was real. While Wilbur was in France, Orville was preparing in the U.S. He was at Fort Myer, Virginia. He would show the plane to the U.S. Army. The military finally agreed to a test. But the Wrights had to prove several things. The plane must carry 2 people. It had to fly for 1 full hour. And it had to be safe and reliable. Orville was completely ready. He changed the flyer for this test. He added a passenger seat. He also improved the controls. In September 1908, Orville began his shows. Just like his brother in France, Orville amazed the American crowds. He flew high above the trees. He stayed in the air for 62 minutes. He carried Army officers with him. He made perfect, smooth landings. The crowds cheered loudly. Reporters wrote amazing headlines. "America finally flies." People who once laughed now cried. But then, a terrible thing happened. On one demonstration flight, Orville took a passenger with him. Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge was his name. He was a young U.S. Army officer. During the flight, the propeller cracked. The plane began to shake violently. The machine fell from 75 feet high. The crowd screamed in horror. The flyer hit the ground hard. Orville was seriously injured. His hip, ribs, and leg were broken. But Lieutenant Selfridge died. He became the first person to die in a crash. For weeks, Orville was in a hospital. He was barely able to move. Newspapers that praised the Wrights now asked if flying was too dangerous. Was this whole thing a mistake? The Wright brothers were devastated. They fought so hard to prove their work, and now people were afraid of it. But Wilbur did not stop his work. He kept flying in Europe, with even more passengers and crowds. And he earned even more respect. Soon, the Wright brothers were famous, the biggest name in aviation. By 1909, everything had changed. The U.S. Army signed a contract. They agreed to buy their airplane. France, Germany, and Italy offered deals. They started to train new pilots. They opened aviation schools. They were now inventors and entrepreneurs. They were teachers of flight. And they were finally seen as heroes. They created the Wright Company. They hired workers and built planes. They trained the first pilot generation. In 1909, they were invited to Washington, D.C. Thousands of people came to celebrate. Even the U.S. president was there. There were parades and medals. People called them the men who gave us wings. From being ignored and mocked, to being respected by kings and presidents. All of this fame and pressure, all of this constant work, it started to have a negative effect. Wilbur was always quiet and serious. He began working day and night. He traveled all the time. He wrote contracts and fought legal battles. He defended against fake inventors. He was no longer just a pilot. He was a businessman and a lawyer. And in the midst of all this, something tragic was about to happen. Part 3. The Price of Flight, Fame, Burnout, and the Final Battle. By 1909, the Wright brothers were leaders. They were no longer just inventors. They launched the Wright Company. It was made to build and sell airplanes. The company owned factories. They hired pilots for promotions. They began teaching others about aviation. And they became extremely wealthy. They were living a life of success. But success did not bring rest for Wilbur. He did not care about being a rich man. He cared deeply about protecting their work. Many other inventors were building planes, using ideas the Wright brothers created. But they gave no credit, so Wilbur decided to fight back. He spent years inside courtrooms, writing documents and explaining patents. He battled copycats who stole their ideas. He was not flying or building anymore. He was only defending their legacy. He was trapped in a world of lawyers, and it was slowly crushing his spirit. The Wrights had a patent from 1906. It was for their wing warping system, the most vital part of airplane control. But other companies built similar planes, including their rival, Glenn Curtiss. They claimed their systems were different. The Wright brothers called it theft. But the courts were extremely slow. The patent war was a bitter legal fight. It lasted for many years. It cost millions of dollars, and it slowed down aviation progress. Wilbur believed he was protecting the truth. Others said he was blocking innovation. Either way, the stress was overwhelming. From 1909 to 1912, Wilbur worked non-stop. He was defending patents, traveling between America and Europe, running the Wright Company, meeting with kings and military leaders, and never taking any rest. He was still the quiet thinker from Dayton, but now he carried the world on his shoulders. And then the unexpected moment came. In early 1912, Wilbur fell sick. It was after a trip to Boston. At first, it just seemed like a cold, but his condition quickly got worse. He was diagnosed with typhoid fever, a deadly infection from bad food or water. He grew weaker with each passing day. His mind, once so sharp, became foggy. His body could no longer move. Orville and his sister Catherine were there. They stayed by his side and prayed. But sadly, nothing helped. Wilbur Wright died at only 45 years old. The man who gave the world wings was gone. The loss was devastating. Orville was completely crushed. The entire world mourned his death. The New York Times wrote a tribute. A great soul has passed away. He gave man flight, but took no glory. Wilbur did not live to see many things. The rise of commercial airlines, the airplane's use in major wars, or the age of global travel he started. But his legacy had already taken flight. After his brother's death, Orville took over the Wright Company. But he was never the same person. He did not enjoy the business world. He did not want to fight in court. He missed his brother terribly. In 1915, he sold his shares. He stepped away from the company. But Orville continued his work privately. He experimented with new airplanes. He served on aviation safety boards. And he protected the Wright legacy. He lived for decades after Wilbur. But he always said the Wrights were T2O, not one. Soon after Wilbur's death, the world saw something heartbreaking. Airplanes were used for war. In World War I, from 1914 to 1918, planes dropped bombs and spied on troops. They fought in deadly aerial dogfights. The machine made to lift people up was now being used to destroy them. Orville once sadly said this, "I wish we had invented something more useful. They changed the world." But they had not imagined this future. As time went on, the Wrights became legends. Airports were named in their honor. Their 1903 Wright Flyer was put in a museum. The Smithsonian Institution in Washington. Stamps, medals, and books celebrated them. In 1939, President Roosevelt made a declaration. He declared National Aviation Day. It was on Orville's birthday. Orville lived to see jet engines. He saw the invention of helicopters, and even the sound barrier being broken. This was in 1947. On January 30th, 1948, Orville Wright died from a heart attack. He was 76 years old. He had witnessed 2 world wars and decades of change in aviation. Part 4, The Sky Belongs to Dreamers, The Eternal Legacy. After Orville's death, the world reflected on what these 2 men had given us. They did not just invent an airplane. They invented a brand new world. Because of their courage and belief, the following things became possible. The age of aviation began. Planes now carry millions of people daily. You can travel the globe in hours. You can have breakfast in New York and enjoy dinner in Paris, all because of their invention. Space exploration followed. The first rocket, the first man in space, the moon landing in 1969. None of this was possible without them. Helicopters, jets, and drones. All modern flying machines exist. Because of the principles the Wrights made, global unity became possible. Families can connect across continents. Cultures can meet and share ideas. Emergency help can arrive much faster. The airplane changed how we live and connect. And it all started in a small bicycle shop, with a dream the world laughed at. The famous photo from December 17th, 1903. Orville flying, Wilbur running alongside, is one of the most shared images ever. It is more than just a photograph. It is a powerful symbol. A symbol of human courage, of believing in the impossible, and of never, ever giving up. Even with their success, there is something tragic in their story. Wilbur never saw global air travel. He never saw commercial airplanes. He died far too soon in 1912. His final years were spent fighting, not enjoying his incredible invention. And Orville lived a much longer life. But he often felt bitter and lonely. He saw people forget Wilbur's role. He saw companies use their designs freely, and he sometimes questioned the sacrifice. They never had their own families. They never got married or retired. They gave everything to their dream, their youth, their health, and their peace. This is why their story is also tragic. They gave the world flight, but they carried the sky's weight alone. Let's pause and reflect for a moment. Let's remember the true lessons here. This is not just a biography. You are learning what it means to dream. First, you do not need permission to begin. The Wrights did not wait for funding. They started with what they had. Start in your small workshop. Start with what is in your hands. Start with what is in your heart. Second, failure is part of the plan. They failed hundreds of times, but each crash was a new lesson. Do not fear failure. Fear not learning from it. Third, stay quiet and let your work speak. They were rejected and ignored. But they did not shout back. They just kept on working. Real power is often silent. Fourth, believe when nobody else does. Their own country mocked them, but their belief was strong. You do not need others to believe first. Fifth, protect what you have built, but do not let it destroy you. Wilbur spent his final years fighting. It consumed his entire life. Protect your vision, but do not lose your peace. Every time a plane takes off, every time a child dreams of being a pilot, every time a rocket touches space, a part of the Wright brothers' dream is alive. Their names continue to live on. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Wright State University in Dayton, National Aviation Day on August 19th. Even NASA honors their legacy. The entire world owes them a great debt. If Wilbur and Orville could speak now, they would not ask for applause. They would simply tell you this: if you have a dream, then build it, even if the world calls you foolish. Even if no one ever thanks you, because one day they will fly because of you. This was the true story of the Wright brothers, not a story of two scientists, but a story of two sons, two dreamers, two builders who changed our sky forever. If this story has touched your heart, if you feel inspired today, please like, share, and subscribe, because here we share stories that give you wings. Also remember, this story improved your English. You learned about history, and you learned new words and phrases. That is the magic of this channel, and the magic of people who never give up. Thank you for watching until the very end. Thank you for honoring the Wrights with us. Now go out and fly toward your dream.